of the county and the region. And the study is very extensive. These are just 4 kind of snapshots of. We literally have a 200-page report that we've got. So this is meant to be a kind of highlights of what's going on. The first thing to note in the upper left is that the military presence has already started to decline. The Department of Defense publishes a report on the total economic impact of their Department of Defense activity in the region. And that includes salaries of soldiers, salaries of civilians, construction, as well as other contracts. And we see from their data, and what we did was they provide data for an 11 county region. We parse that by county, and we see that from the peak in around 2010, we've already reduced the kind of the impact of Fort Bragg by almost 50%. So the trend has already begun, and so part of that was as we were building up, there's a lot of construction, as well as troops coming in. So that construction obviously is no longer needed. So that's one of the drivers, as well as troop strength. So at the peak, we had 51,000 troops in fiscal year 2011. That 51,000 is now down already 4,000 to about 47,000. So it's already begun. And that reduction has had an impact on our regional gross domestic product. So as we were building up troop strength, you can see in this upper right chart that while and so we have on the upper right, there's three regions. There's U.S. in blue, there's North Carolina in kind of amber, and Fayetteville in gray. So you see that in 2000, from 2005, 6, 7, Fayetteville in 8, Fayetteville was actually growing above the national and above the state averages. 2008, in fact, while the U.S. was in recession, this recession began in 2009, recession is in full swing, we were still growing because we were building up with Bragg. But once that buildup had reached its peak, we see that our growth started to decline. And so in fact, by 2012, when the recession had begun to diminish in the nation, and 2013, the recession had begun to diminish in the state, we were actually declining in gross domestic product because that troop strength had begun to decline, and because that construction and all those contractors had begun to decline. So that resulted in, on your lower left, just as an example, our unemployment rate is among the highest actually in our region. So the Federal Reserve of Richmond, part of the Federal Reserve System, every month creates a snapshot of various economic metrics in their district, and that snapshot shows that consistently over the past year, as an example, the Fayetteville Metropolitan Statistical Area, which includes Cumberland County and Hope County, our unemployment has improved, but it's still at 6.3%, the highest in North Carolina metropolitan statistical areas. So that drawdown in troop strength has already begun. It's already having an impact. It's also having an impact on our schools. So at the peak in 2012, military-connected students represented about 31% of our Cumberland County school students. And that was about 16,000 of our 52,000 students were military-connected. As of the fiscal year 2017, as reported by the military, they actually report how many students are in major military installation areas. That number was down from 16,000 to 12,000, and the percentage was down from 31% in 2012, fiscal year 2012, to 24% in fiscal year 2017. So this drawdown has had an impact. With those students come money. We don't show it here, but in the report you'll see that the Department of Defense gives something they call impact aid. which is for school districts. They give it directly to the school district, and it's for school districts that are adjacent to military installations, because military installations don't pay property tax. So that impact aid has gone from $6 million just for, there's various categories of impact aid, but for operational impact aid, that's gone from $6 million in 2012 down to about $2 to $3 million in the latest fiscal year. So this drawdown is already having an impact. So, but we also want to look at our assets. So as we looked at this, we said, what are some of the assets we can leverage to offset this drawdown? And so this chart has three illustrative ways that we can potentially leverage assets. We looked at opportunities. So we're not yet at strategies. These are just illustrating opportunities that we've kind of unearthed. One is all around defense contracting. So as we looked at our proportion of defense contracts relative to peer regions, like at Fort Benning, or looked at Huntsville, Alabama, and Redstone Arsenal, we saw that the proportion of defense contracts in Fayetteville is relatively low compared to the proportion of defense contracts in other peer communities. And so we said, well, one opportunity, illustrative, is Department of Defense is looking for high-tech materials, high-tech textiles with advanced cooling, for example, electronics in those textiles to help our war fighters be more effective. Turns out, of course, North Carolina has textile expertise, and we've got assets in textiles. So maybe we can figure out a way, as an illustration, to help satisfy this demand for advanced textiles with some of our existing expertise and assets that may actually be kind of mothballed right now. Another opportunity that we looked at, a class of opportunity, was maybe we can leverage this, our military technology, and help with the assistance of the region commercialize that military technology for non-defense applications. So one example of that is drone technology. Drones are very much in the news these days. We've got actually a battalion at Fort Bragg that focuses on drones. Maybe we can look at ways of using expertise to apply drones for agricultural purposes, as an example, and build businesses around that. And then our analysis also looked at the extent to which there may be demand for goods in Cumberland County that are actually not met in Cumberland County. And so we said maybe that's an opportunity for have some of those goods produced in Cumberland County. So as an example, the input analysis shows that the residents in Cumberland County actually go out of the county to buy specialty food products and to go buy some of our common electronics. So those are just some simple opportunities that kind of pop up. It says, well, rather than have folks go to Wake County, for example, to get their electronics, maybe we could find ways to encourage some of that here in the county. So those are some of the opportunities. Again, we haven't said these are the things we want to prioritize. These are just some of the opportunities that we've as unearthed as part of this analysis. And now so looked at now. This is the landscape. Now, what happens if we looked at various scenarios. A high case scenario was if 3,000 troops are reduced, and that troop reduction is kind of across the board representative. So it includes generals being reduced, as well as colonels and majors and privates, the whole across the board. So if that happens, a reduction of 3,000 troops would result in almost 5,000 total reduction in jobs, including the troops, plus another 2,000 beyond the troops, roughly, and reduction in total output about $600 million in the region. And then you can see from this chart shows a reduction by county. It shows for three different sets of troop reduction scenarios, by county, what that could have, impact could have on employment, labor income, total output, and taxes. So to summarize all that, one way of thinking about it is, again, there is a range, but at the high end, for every 100 active duty military jobs that are reduced by the military, you can think of that as roughly 60 jobs beyond those taken out of the region because of those military spend money on cars, they spend money in restaurants, and those expenditures create jobs. So for every 100 jobs you take out of the military, you reduce another 60 jobs outside, including jobs of civilians on Fort Bragg. Another way of looking at it is for every job that you take out of the military, you're taking $90,000 of labor income roughly out of the system. That's not just the labor income of the soldiers, which don't make $90,000, but it's a labor income of those jobs that those soldiers help support. All right, so I'm gonna now turn it over to my colleague Crystal Morphus, head of the Creative Economic Development Consulting Firm, and she'll take it from here.
Thank you, Greg. So with all of the analysis, the questions we ask is what to do about it. Obviously, if the military increases or decreases troops by 1,000, there may not be a large impact, but there'll be some. But if there's 3,000 troops with everyone associated with it, would be a larger impact. So how should that influence the economic development policy of Cumberland County as well as the region? And so that's what our firm looked at in this process. We looked at target sectors. In economic development, target sectors are the industries in which you focus your external marketing efforts. It does not mean that you don't foster other industries that are growing in your community, but where do you actively direct your marketing dollars and recruitment dollars? And you'll see that these target sectors align with clusters that are growing and doing well in your community. They align with the target clusters of your economic development program. But also, they align with the region as well. We see in the Research Triangle region and the Southeast region growing clusters of defense and security, of advanced manufacturing in particular. But where there's a niche for you is in business services. That is a sector that is not already being targeted by either of the regions, but there's a lot of opportunity in this community for business services. And one reason for that is military spouses and dependents that are seeking employment in your community. And I'll be glad to talk with you about that at some point as well. We do a lot of research on military spouse employment. But what I'll say about target sectors and about your economic development policy is, for the most part, your assets do not change if there is a troop reduction of 1,000 or even 2,000, except for some changes in workforce. The reasons that companies come to Cumberland County will remain the same. Your location on 95, your water, sewer infrastructure, the universities and community colleges that you have in the region, your proximity to the metro areas around you, those things will not change. So if there is a troop reduction or an addition of 1,000 troops or 2,000 troops, the assets in which you base your economic development strategy, for the most part, would not change, with the exception of maybe some workforce changes if there is a large swing in troops. So we looked at your workforce development strategy and your economic development strategy, and again, how should this influence your economic development policy? You, I'm sure, know that the number one site location factor for all companies is workforce. It's talent. Companies will become interested in your community maybe because of your location or because of a building or a business park that you have. But what convinces them to make an investment in Cumberland County is workforce and talent. So a lot of the recommendations in our report to you is to align workforce development strategies with those growing sectors in the economy, and to match dislocated military and civilian workers with those target sectors. In the report, you'll see a lot of information about crosswalking military occupations with civilian occupations and how that information can be used in training. Additional skills gap training. We know that there are skills gaps, especially for advanced manufacturing and some of the other target sectors, and how to really align your workforce and educational programs with your target sectors. And additional job placement services, we do find that in today's economy, job placement services are very important because people oftentimes have to be retrained for a new job. Additional training assistance for entrepreneurs. Greg mentioned the contracting opportunities. We know that about more than half, 55% of exiting military would prefer to stay in this location if they had employment opportunities. One of the alternatives to traditional employment is entrepreneurship, and we do find a lot of veteran and exiting military willing to start their own small businesses in the community. So we have several recommendations to support entrepreneurship. And then really aligning regional training systems with manufacturing. And one good example is apprenticeships. We found a good apprenticeship model in Harnett County that can be applied to the region. In terms of your economic development strategy, really there are a lot of recommendations to enhance some of the good things you're already doing in terms of business recruitment and adding niche sectors with business recruitment in addition to contractors. In your business retention and expansion program, creating at-risk profile for the companies that are most likely to be impacted by a reduction at the base. We've identified those in the study, and you can incorporate that into your business retention expansion program. Increased connectivity. We focus quite a bit on leadership in the region. I will tell you that I have been practicing economic development for more than 20 years, and the only difference between successful and unsuccessful communities is leadership. So we recommend further regional leadership development to connect leaders across the region to leverage the expertise that you have. Also in the area of increased connectivity is placemaking. I mentioned the number one site location factor of companies is talent. You will know that young people today move to a place where they want to be, and then they look for a job, which is counterintuitive to people of my age who followed a job. But I know that this community has put a lot of investment into placemaking, and that is directly related to economic development and to retaining young people, the workforce of tomorrow. Just by the way, if you did not know, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce by 2025, which is only 8 years away, and that's a staggering number. Investing in education and training, the key recommendation there is to really transform to a K through 14 system. There are good models in other states where community raise an endowment to fund free community college for all high school graduates. There are a couple of good models in South Carolina. There are several in Virginia. That would be a way for this community to retain families. If your community was one of those that offered a free community college education to every high school graduate, it would be a way for you to distinguish yourself in the marketplace. It would also signify your commitment to workforce development, education, and talent development in this community. I mentioned supporting entrepreneurship. About 82% of all the businesses in this region employ less than 10 people. We know as a nation that small business is the backbone of our economy. So we have several recommendations to support capital, the development of capital opportunities for small business and entrepreneurs. So I mentioned that with a troop reduction or an increase of 1,000 or 2,000, there really wouldn't be a lot of change in your asset base. But what happens if there's a dramatic reduction? What happens if there's 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 troops reduced, and in addition to that, all of the other people that are supported, Greg mentioned a 60 for every 100, in your community? You could find yourself with large areas of vacant housing. You could find yourself with a lot of vacant seats in school buildings. And so one of the things we did was to ask ourselves, what could a community do if they had a mass exodus of people? So we have a couple of interesting programs across the country where communities are actively recruiting people to live in their community, and also some recommendations for reuse of vacant space. For example, if you found large neighborhoods vacant or if you found school buildings vacant. So I don't think that that's something, well, let me just back up. That's not something we spend a lot of time on because we don't anticipate a huge troop reduction at a single point in time. However, I encourage you to read through that section and kind of think outside the box and think ahead of what could happen. I'll close with some next steps. As Greg led off, this is a draft report, and we are very interested in your feedback and comments. We are actually presenting 3 times today. At 2 o'clock, we're in Hoke County. At 5 o'clock, we're in Fayetteville. And then on February 14th, we're in Harnett County. After receiving feedback from each of the local government boards, we will revise this draft and present it to our steering committee. We have a meeting on March the 14th. If you've not had an opportunity to read the full report, or you have some thoughts after this meeting, I encourage you to reach out to Patricia Tyson at the city, or Tracy Jackson, your representative to the steering committee, or to Fayetteville State, or to me directly if you have any thoughts, because we're going to be in this process of gathering feedback and revising the report through March 14th. And then we will, after that steering committee meeting, develop a final report that we will present to the region and launch it forward. So with that, I will just say again that we appreciate your involvement in this study. We look forward to hearing input from you. I will be willing to answer the easy questions, and my team members from Fayetteville State will answer the hard ones. Yes.
Yeah,
Commissioner Booth.
yeah, this would be an easy one. If I could just get everybody, the three presenters' contact information sent to me at some time after the meeting.
Absolutely.
And being a Army brat, and my dad was in 30 years, I should be better with acronyms, but under the workforce development strategy, there's a lot of NC Works/TAP, and then SBTDC/SBC/VBOC/MBC.
Yeah, we spell them all out in the, it's the acronym soup. SBTDT, Small Business and Technology Development Center,
That's okay.
SBC, Small Business Center.
When you send me the information, if you can send that to me too.
We'll be glad to do that. There's a lot of alphabet
I don't want
soup.
to slow it up, but, you know.
Yes.
Anybody else have any questions? I just have one for Mr. McAfee, if you come up for just one moment. And I guess I'd like to see it in the report, because I kind of looked at the report.
I go back to one of the slides.
I don't think you need to, but it talks about the economic impact
Yes.
and the drawdown and the money that comes down, and you talk about the impact aid. But I'd like to see the other side too, is whether my expenses or expenditures at the health department, the DSS and all of that are comparable to the drawdown. So I guess my question would be, as the military draws down and the money draws down, do I have a comparable decrease in services that I provide? I didn't see that that much. So if that would be one of the suggestions that I have as you go forward, that those comparisons be made, because I think it's important for us to be able to have a concrete discussion. Is that if my expenditures still stay high, even though you've dropped off a number of military, the impact is even more devastating than what you show on the slides.
It's a very good point, and we will elaborate on that. And in fact, a high proportion of those who depart from the military actually stay in the area.
Right.
So we will make that more clear. But thank you for that input.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else have any questions on after that? So
I do have a quick
Yes.
question, if I can. Greg, thanks for coming and bringing your entourage. I know him from a committee that I'm on, so. But how much of this report here was prepared before the election of 2016, the presidential election?
Most of the data was done prior to that election, the data collection.
I'm not trying to be political or anything. I'm just wondering, before, I think the Obama administration was talking about drawing down some troops, and now the talk is possibly going back up. Do you think that's going to have any impact on this report going forward as
I'll
we
say
discuss?
one thing, and then probably Crystal will
okay.
have a comment as well. But I've opened it by saying we look at this as both opportunities for growth, no matter what happens with the troop drawdown. So we're identifying opportunities that even if troops, there is no change in troops, that we can leverage these assets. And if you look, so we, and this is kind of a framework, so we really don't know what will happen with troop strength, but you can also think about it as this is kind of reciprocal. So if troop drawdown could have at a maximum 60 jobs per 100 people reduced, could also mean 60 jobs per 100 people increased. Mm-hmm. So you can look at it either way. And the one thing we're also looking at is we very much understand, and we will track what the sense of the new administration is and how they want to spend money, because the indication is probably not a high interest in deployments of troops around the world, but perhaps more interest in increasing strength in other ways. So we will keep close tabs on that and see how we can leverage that.
Great. Thank you so much.
I will say that for the economic development strategy part, that will remain in large part relevant because the assets, the inherent assets that you have would not be changed, except for you might have more talent, military spouses. But here's a word of caution for you, and that is complacency. And when we had the community meetings in Fayetteville and Cumberland County, within just a few minutes of opening the meeting, there was discussion of diversity of the economy. There was discussion of creating a brand outside of Fort Bragg and the desire to do that. And as someone who worked in economic development in the early and mid-1990s, when we saw the writing on the wall with NAFTA and the textile industry, but we refused to act until the crisis was upon us, we found ourselves way behind the 8 ball, and still many communities have not recovered. So I would encourage you that even if there is projected growth, remember that your business leaders want diversity, they want alternative opportunities in the economy, and that you never know with another change of administration when the crisis could be upon you. And so planning for that diversification well in advance of it would be my advice.
Thank you so very much. And thank you for the report. I think each one of us got the report, and we'll be able to send back any further questions that we have, and they'll be willing to do that, and we welcome you to come back to speak with us. Thank you so very much. Madam Manager, I think we'll go to consideration and donation of a right-of-way.
Yes, sir, that's item number 5, Mr. Moorfield.
Commissioners, this is on the property of New Century Middle School. It's owned by the county, although it's actually school board property. It's owned by the county instant to a financing arrangement, and the school board will have to approve this also. I platted out the drawing of what they want, and it looks like a straight line because it literally is, I don't know how they came up with this, but it's about 54 feet in length and about 6 inches in width. But it's a request for a donation for a little encroachment of the right of way there, and I'm recommending approval. I've already submitted this to the school board attorney and trying to get the school board to act concurrently with this.
Anybody got any questions? Commissioner Council.
Oh, no, I was ready to make a motion that we follow the recommendation.
Second.
I'll second that.
You know, and I'm gonna call for a vote on that, but I would think that one of these, so that we don't have to look at it coming through here, if it just comes through the committee, it can go on to the consent agenda as opposed to having to do this. So if we could possibly try to put some of these on the committee when we do the committees. All those in favor of the motion?
Unanimous?
Appointments to the board and committees, Commissioner Fairclough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have an equal number of nominees for the appointments. I'll read those very briefly. First of all, for the Cumberland County Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, we have 5 vacancies. The nominees are Michael Onifer, Austin Campbell, Terry Thomas, Deborah Rosen, and Dwight Creech. And for the Cumberland County Local Emergency Planning Committee, we have also 3 vacancies. Those nominees are Captain J.T. Morgan, Greg Phillips, and James Bullard. And at this time, I move that we appoint these people to those positions.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Unanimous?
Item number 8, Mr. Chairman, is closed session for a personnel matter pursuant to North Carolina General Statutes 143, 318, 11A6.
If I can get a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Closed session.
All those in favor?
Unanimous?
We'll go into closed session for personnel matters. Should we take that?